Hello, everyone. This is Sherry Greenhouse, Managing Partner of CRM Exchange, and I'd like to welcome you to our first session today. Are your customers satisfied across all channels? Do you know where your customer experience is falling apart? Brought to you by AVOKE Analytics. I'm sure many of you have participated in these conferences all week. So just using, there's chat and there's Q&A and chats where you can talk to your WebEx producer. If you have any technical issues, you would select Send to, and WebEx producer, and Q&A is where you would put your questions. So just to get used to using these tools, using that Q&A box, let's see what city are you all in today? Not all of you collectively, individually, what city are you coming in from? And let's see, yesterday we had companies from actually all over the world that were sitting in on some of these sessions. If you have not had a chance to pick up the PDF of the slides, they're found on eCRM Events, which is where you initially went and registered. You go in, you log in, and you go to the Agenda tab and download the PDF of the slides. Within 24 hours, the recordings are up. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday's recordings are all up on the slides at this time. There is a survey that will pop up at the end of this presentation. If you fill that out, let us know what you thought of this webcast. And, of course, remember to go to the exhibit hall. Lots of white papers, case studies, brochures, and you do want to visit the AVOKE booth at the end of the presentation. So now I would like to introduce your presenter for today, Joe Alwyn, Vice President and General Manager of AVOKE Analytics, Raytheon BDN Technologies. Based on 30 years of research and practice, companies select AVOKE Analytics to optimize customer satisfaction, revenue, and cost efficiency. Joe was previously VP GM of Call Center Solutions at Empiric. He has 25 years of experience turning technology innovation into practical business solutions. And Joe's done a lot of these virtual conferences, always gets really great marks, wonderful speaker, so I'm so happy that he can speak with us today. So, Joe, take it away.
Thank you, Sherry. Wow, what an introduction. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. I see Seattle, I see Austin, Texas. Fantastic to have folks joining us from all over the country and spending a little time with us here, I guess, early in the morning in the West Coast, lunch hour here on the East Coast. So we're going to talk about satisfaction and multi-channels. It certainly is a multi-channel world. I love using other channels, multiple channels, depending on who I'm dealing with and whether I'm doing something during the day or late at night. So I think we've all become multi-channel users, and we all understand the importance of satisfaction. But, now that we have multiple touch points, multiple channels, we have many more places where we can either execute well or not execute well on handling customers' inquiries. And so, the issue of getting a handle on the customer's experience, of finding a way to monitor, understand customer experiences in and across the various channels is just a more complex issue now and a more important issue now, not as simple as when everything came over the phone. And so that's really what brings us here today to talk about satisfaction across channels and how do we get a handle on this in an increasingly complex world where we have to provide service where our customers want to get service. So we have to be present in multiple channels. And so, how do we manage that satisfaction and experience issue in this increasingly complex environment? Well, so we'll start with just a few facts and figures. And, sometimes we put these in the presentation and I argue that, come on, folks know all this stuff. But you know what? These numbers keep moving. And I know when you go back and talk to other leaders in your companies and talk to leadership in your companies, having this kind of data to substantiate why it's important to pay attention to this area can be valuable. So we're happy to kind of share with you some of the latest and greatest stats about the impact of satisfaction and the impact of customer experience. So this is a survey done in 2013 describing, the impact to the business of ensuring that we're providing great service and great experiences. And in this particular survey, large survey done by a very large company, said that 86% of the respondents said that they will actually pay more for a great experience. And that number seems to be going up for me every year. As we sort of watch this come across in various surveys, it seems as if customers are increasingly willing to actually pay a little more for extra service. On the flip side, if the service isn't there, people do leave, and it hurts the business. I actually had a team meeting with my entire organization earlier today and retold a couple of stories. I won't sort of, name the guilty parties on the call today, but I can tell you there is a laptop company that I will not do business with again, and there is an internet and cable and phone company that I will not do business again. Why? Because of just terrible, terrible, terrible experiences. And when I look back at those experiences, I think to myself, they could have handled it so much better. But these are, again, from some of the latest surveys and some of the latest data, the kind of statistics that are out there that sort of, reinforces our own personal experiences in dealing with the companies that we each do business with in our personal lives. People do switch brands due to bad experiences. Happens here in the companies that I use as vendors to run the AVOKE Analytics business, happens in my personal life. And that translates into, real revenue loss and a significant impact to our companies. What makes people unhappy? Well, some of this is, things that we've always known about, right? Timeliness, failed transactions, I wasn't treated with respect. But the multi-channel world is bringing in some new items that we have to start managing, which is the two on the right here. When you're forced to use multiple channels to get an answer to a question, that is not a great experience. Or even worse, if you have to use multiple channels and you get different answers in each different channel, super, super aggravating and can contribute to these sort of switching decisions, these defections, customers going elsewhere. And let me tell you a story here about this last one, about service across channels. One thing that I think we fail to realize in a lot of customer service organizations is that the phone is a multi-channel mechanism. And you might say, wait a minute, it's just the phone. What do you mean it's a multi-channel mechanism? Well, the way we manage call centers in most large enterprises is we break the call center into parts and we manage the call center as separate channels. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is the IVR team is sort of isolated and doesn't talk to everybody else, and the internal centers that we staff are sort of isolated and don't talk to the other centers, and the external vendors that we use run centers and they don't talk to anybody else either. And so here's a personal experience. This is the same laptop company that I won't do business with again. I called in and they said, oh, you have a consumer laptop. I went to a consumer agent. The consumer agent said, give me your serial number, give me your ID, give me the information about your machine. Oh, this is not a consumer machine. It's a professional machine. I have to transfer you to the commercial professional side of the house for servicing that. So the rep transferred me to the professional side. And guess what happened? Give me your name, give me your serial number, describe your product, when did you buy it? Oh, that's a consumer machine. I'm commercial. I'm going to have to transfer you back to the consumer side. I'm like, this is unbelievable. I mean, this is one phone call. I've talked to two reps. I've given them exactly the same information. My ID, my serial number, model number. One of them thinks it's a commercial laptop. The other one thinks it's a consumer laptop. Well, and this is just one phone call. Two transfers in one phone call. Now multiply that across touch points and email and web chat and social, and we can see how this issue gets even more complex, right? So what's the message here? The message is that managing the satisfaction, managing the experience across multiple channels is vital and hard. But the other message here is don't forget that the reality is we've all got, in many places, we've got multi-channel and cross-channel problems in the phone channel by itself because we frequently manage it as these discrete, separate sort of servicing teams, and we don't stitch them all together to make sure there's some consistency across those experiences. So there you go. I'm sure you all have experiences like mine that you can share about vendors that have just sort of handled things wrong, and that, of course, is costly. And what does it do? Well, let's put some more numbers here. It certainly is a customer deflection issue. A customer defection issue. Customers going off to other providers. I can certainly retell, I can think of immediately things that computer company and that cable company could have done better. They didn't have to handle me the way they did, and I might still be their customers. And then, of course, we have cost of service delivery. When one channel doesn't work and I have to go to another channel, when one agent doesn't do it and I have to be transferred to another agent wrongly sometimes, that's just cost going through the roof, right? So if we don't coordinate how we handle experiences across channels, even across resource teams within a channel, it just drives costs through the roof, right? So it's important to manage the efficiency, the productivity of our customer contact operations, and at the same time provide an experience which prevents loss of customers and strengthens loyalty. And here's another survey. Now, earlier we saw 86% would actually pay more for good service. Here's a more specific thing, because the frequent question you get back is how much more would they pay? Well, here you go, 73%. The great majority would spend 10% more. So think about that. If you could charge 10% more, what does that do? That is almost completely profit to the bottom line. A 10% price increase is a huge positive impact on the financial performance of the business. So the fact that we can focus on service and focus on customer experiences and not only reduce the cost of delivering service, but at the same time enhance customer retention and give us the opportunity to have a little more pricing power and attract those customers that are willing to pay for service, the impact can be just phenomenal for our businesses. So what are the kind of new problems that companies are encountering in managing customer experience in a multi-channel or omni-channel world? First of all, a lot of companies are facing just the basic argument of getting leadership and company buy-in to implement a multi-channel solution. And what we are seeing is that there are some poorly done multi-channel approaches. In fact, this term omnichannel is sort of coming out to sort of describe or differentiate multi-channel done poorly from multi-channel done well. And as far as my interpretation and my understanding of omnichannel, the way I like to describe omnichannel is multi done right. Multi done wrong is distinct channels that are not connected. And if they're not connected, what does that mean? That means that if I contact you in one channel and have to switch, when I go to the phone, there's no record or no understanding, or the agent can't seem to access what happened in my emails. So the interactions are not connected. Or even worse, as in my example on the phone where I get two different answers, provide the exact same information to two agents, get two completely different answers. Well, that can happen across chat and email, across email and phone, across chat and phone. So the interactions are not integrated. The back ends are not tied together. And so, these are some of the new problems that are creeping up as we try to support more and more venues, more and more connection opportunities for customers to reach us with their questions and with their inquiries. So that's a sort of a new problem, and it certainly is a new problem in terms of managing satisfaction and managing cost. Each one of these channels is just another opportunity to not service the customer the way they want to be serviced. We certainly have the case where we can have agents having to look through multiple sources of information. This is the classic example. It's just one more screen they have to go see whether there was an email interaction, whether there was a web interaction, whether there was a retail retail storefront transaction. And so if we don't integrate the back ends, we just extend the service time. We make the agent's jobs more complex. And here's an interesting one that's creeping up in the online channel, especially with some of the stories of these breaches recently. It's sort of reawakening these fears about privacy and personal information. And we'll see whether it has a material impact on people's use of online channels. But there's a large number of people now who are feel they can't trust how their providers use their information, and so it has the potential, and maybe some of you might be seeing this, to impact how many folks are going to use the online channels because of the concern about the security of providing information in an online forum versus doing it over the phone. And, of course, at the bottom line, the sort of an issue that is not new but is still true in a multi-channel world is use my time well, right? I think that's just a critical thing. I think, for me, that's one of the best explanations of the changing channel preferences that we see in the demographics of our customers today. My daughter just loves chat because it just is, she doesn't have to sign up for a 20-minute phone call with Dad. She can send me a text and do other things, and she'll get a text back, right? So it's just sort of how can I do things more quickly? How can I take the time out of a phone call by using another form? But if those channels don't service me quickly, I'm out, and they're either going to abandon that interaction, they're going to abandon you as a provider, or they're going to go to another channel and basically drive up your cost structure. All right, so let's talk about phone then for a moment. What is the new role of telephone in a multi-channel world? Well, I suppose some might get a lot of headlines and attract a lot of attention by making sort of wild prognostications that phone is going away. And we certainly don't see that at all. The companies we deal with see phone volumes shrinking as a percentage of total contact volume. So phone volume might have been 80% of their contact volume a couple of years ago. It's 70% or 65% now. So it's a smaller share of total contact volume. Unfortunately, it still is the dominant share of the cost of providing customer service, right? Because it is the most expensive channel. So, we might see 10 or 20% of our contact volume go to other channels, but we only see a small shift in cost, right? Because phone still dominates the cost structure of customer service. And what we see, this is an interesting graphic. This is another study from 2013. And this is actually one of the higher numbers I've seen for this, 70% preference to use the telephone to call. We're seeing surveys now, depending on the industry, depending on the type of inquiry, we're seeing in some groups the preference for using the phone for the first contact is as low as 50%. Here, this was specifically for help. So if you're calling about, you've got a problem, not a balance inquiry, not a pay my bill, not necessarily a purchase transaction, but more of a customer service or technical support issue, there still is a big preference for phone. Why? Because I want to get a person. Because with a person, I can get to a solution faster than maybe wandering through, a bunch of hits on a Google search to see which one actually is a valid fix to solve my problem. And the opportunity on the phone to interact with the person, ask questions, and get to a solution more quickly. So phone is it's not a medium that's going away. It's a medium that is being used where it fits the best, which is not a balance inquiry. What it is I have a complex customer support issue. I have a complex technical support issue. Or the other place where phone is being used is as sort of the rescue, the escalation channel when I'm not getting my needs met elsewhere. And so, this is really interesting because I think companies have to ask themselves, should we turn off all investment in those phone and voice technologies and put all of our money into these other channels, or do we actually have to have a kind of a portfolio approach? And we have to realize that one isn't replacing the other. We now have a mix, and we're going to have a mix for a very long time. And the question is, what type of inquiries are going to last and sustain in each of these channels, and therefore what kind of investments do we need to have? What this data is telling us is that we probably have to invest more in training in call center and our agents on the phone, because phone agents are increasingly going to handle more and more complex kinds of inquiries. The simple things are going elsewhere. So we're going to have to change our training profile. Maybe we're going to have to change our hiring profile because the phone is going to be, where the really, really hard questions are. And maybe we need to pay even more attention to analytics in the phone, because the phone is where all the business intelligence is coming in about stuff that's broken. issues, the hard questions, the processes customers don't understand, the confusing letters that we sent in mail, the fact that they tried in social media, they tried in web chat, they tried in email, and they're frustrated. And that's the contact volume that's in the telephone, suggests that phone understanding what's going on in those calls is just increasingly important. If your phone volume is 20% balance inquiry, I don't know that we need analytics to look at balance inquiries over the phone, but we sure do if it's product complaints, billing problems, et cetera. So how do we do that then? If it's really important to understand what's happening across these channels, how are we going to do that? We just talked about the need to get understanding out of those telephone interactions, but what about getting understanding out of some of these other channels? I mean, if we're going to interact with customers across all these channels, chat, telephone, email, retail point of presence, how do we get intelligence from all of those contacts? And this is really a hard problem. In fact, I don't know, maybe we should have made this guy's pick even bigger and his jackhammer even bigger, because this is really a complex issue. And if you think about it, in order to do analytics, what do we have to do? We have got to identify the customer in each of these channels. So that in the log somewhere, in the transaction records that come from each of these systems, we have an identifier. Then we have to pull that data together so we can sync the identifiers in each of these channels so that we can tie together the chat interaction with the website interaction, with the phone interaction, with the retail point of store interaction. And if we don't identify consistently, or if we don't use the same information to identify, pulling this stuff together is going to become an extremely complex exercise. So we've got a very challenging integration exercise to pull this data together. And then we've got such a huge pile of data, it becomes a very challenging exercise to mine the data. And if you think about it, if a lot of these non-voice channels are relatively simple inquiries, are we really spending money in the right places? Do we really need to be aggregating a ton of data and mining information about simple inquiries that that are relatively straightforward on our website, in our other channels? So the answer might be that there's actually other ways to go about this. Sure, I mean there are companies that are tackling this option on the right, on the left here, but it's a big undertaking. If you have systems for these different channels for multiple vendors, honestly, even if you have them from the same vendor, because a lot of these multi-channel suites have been assembled through acquisitions, which means that the technologies aren't necessarily well integrated. I had a big conversation with a customer 2 weeks ago about they bought the suite, and then they found out the suite was 5 products that are integrated in PowerPoint, but the engineering teams don't talk to each other. So even if you buy this stuff from one vendor, you've got a big job ahead of you potentially to tie this stuff together, put it into a warehouse, and develop some sort of integrated view. And what if you use outsource partners? What if you outsource certain kinds of phone calls to business process outsourcers? What if you rely on partners in the healthcare business? Not uncommon. Health insurance companies typically rely on third parties for durable medical equipment. So if you call your health insurance company for a question about a wheelchair or crutches, that call is going off to another company. Well, that is still an experience with your health insurance company, and yet they've transferred you to another company. And your interaction now with a DME provider affects the brand perception of your health insurance provider. And yet your health insurance provider has no data about how the DME provider handled you. So it's one thing to integrate the stuff that's under your roof. Can you integrate all of the information from all of these business partners that are involved in either delivering service or providing part of the solution that you sell to your customers? So, all right. So the point is, big complex data warehouses are expensive. Always have been. This is not new. It's always, certainly been this way in IT for as long as I can remember. So what's the alternative? Well, the alternative is kind of, be a detective. And I had, one of my customers describes their role as CSI, crime scene investigators. They hunt and look for evidence to figure out what's going on. And it's not necessary to do that. It's not necessary to build that monster warehouse if you develop the ability and have the skills and the tools and know the places to go to sort of find evidence of what's going on. So we all know this quote, right? Why rob banks? That's where the money is. So why analyze phone calls? Because that's where people go when they have a problem. So perhaps a lower cost, more actionable, faster way to find the most important cross-channel issues you have would be to pay a little more attention to the call center. If people are so frustrated with a service on your website that they take the time to call and then talk about it with an agent, that might be the most important thing you need to fix on your website. So, for a lot of us, we want to draw that Pareto chart. We want to know, what are the tallest problems so we can tackle those first. Well, the tallest problems are the ones that people take agent time to vent about, what they've tried to do in interacting with your company and other channels. So, that's where the evidence is. And we didn't have to build a warehouse. We didn't have to integrate any other data. It didn't matter whether our multi-channel systems were from multiple vendors or one vendor, because it all comes here when it turns, when it's a mess. So, and so the opportunity then is to figure out and to focus a little bit on phone for two reasons. Remember, phone has this long-term important role in the multi-channel mix. It's not going away. In fact, it's probably a more important sort of brand experience because it's an escalated brand experience, and it certainly is a big part of the cost structure. So, we need to pay attention to phone for that reason, if for no other reason. And secondly, it's the place where problems come, and therefore we can learn a lot about the rest of our company by paying attention to what's at the call center. And maybe we don't need to go, put a giant data warehouse project in front of the business initiative of understanding channel behavior and process improvement opportunities across our variety of touch points. So one of the things that we offer in the AVOKE unit is in the AVOKE business and the AVOKE analytics solution is the ability to look at whole calls. And maybe I should just spend a moment sort of describing what that means. We tend to look at calls from the standpoint of the customer, and from the customer standpoint, the phone call starts when they dial and ends when they hang up. It's not timed with, a one agent, ignoring what happened prior to that agent and what happened after. It's the entire call from start to finish. And so what we find is that by looking at calls from the customer's perspective, we get a bigger view of, a more complete view of the interaction process that really happened to that customer. We get a complete view of the total cost of servicing that inquiry. And we get a more complete view of the customer's experience. Where were they satisfied? Where were they not satisfied? Where did things go wrong? We get a richer understanding of their issue. And what that means is we understand root cause. We understand enough about the problem to start to imagine, design, and synthesize out those process improvements that are going to make it better for everybody. So by mining the entire dialing to hang up call experience, we find, the most egregious problems in other channels. And when I say other channels, again, that includes the multiple resources that make up our phone channel. So it's the problems that occur in your outsourced tier one vendor, your DME provider's call center, your IVR provider's call center system, et cetera. And because we have the completeness of the interaction and we have the customer sort of describing it in their words, it's so much more informational than application log. Caller was here, there, and, progress through screens, perhaps on an agent desktop or web logs. And to hear a customer talk about it, you get a level of detail that tells you why a problem occurred and where it occurred. And that richness gets you to a solution, to an understanding of the root cause so much faster. The other thing, of course, the whole call does is it gives us the call flow, not just the agent dialogue, but the flow of that call across all of the resources that are required for that call to be handled. At the lowest level, we get to see if the telephony infrastructure delivers the call effectively, what what the IVR did, what our speed track applications did, what the CPI system did, and in transfers, what happened with every agent along the way. Does each transfer correct? Did the agents probe correctly? Did they send the call on to the proper destination? We get that whole flow, not just, an agent's handling of the call, but the entire flow. And that gives us all of those multi-channel issues that exist in the call center itself. And we can now keep track of how we're optimizing our call center, how we're designing the strategy for our call center to adapt as the mix of call types changes. And we can really process improvement becomes a continuous exercise. Partly because there's changes in our business all the time that disrupt things. Partly because I think we're going to continue to see this shift in the nature of interactions that are in phone. And as the type of interactions that are in the phone channel change, we're going to have to keep revisiting the processes that we have at work in order to fit the nature of the call volume that we're getting as that shifts over time. And then finally, of course, is the just phenomenal opportunities to reduce costs. We routinely help customers identify opportunities to take 10, 15, 20% of cost out of their assisted, agent-handled call volume. And if you think about, what that can do to the customer service operation, if we could free up 10, 15% of the resources from our call centers, oh, my God, we could fund some of those back-end improvements we need in order to make Omnichannel really work. So there are opportunities to sort of free up resources by doing things smarter, deploy them to some other things that we need funds for, and at the same time, we free up that money by making service better. This is the wonderful magic about process improvement. You get cost reduction and you get higher satisfaction. You get cost reduction and better Net Promoter Scores, cost reduction and lower customer effort. And so, that's again, some of the big advantages of really looking at phone as the opportunity, the place where we can learn so much about what's going on. So I've been talking about this forever, but let me share with you a couple of examples here. These are actual calls, and they're not Verizon calls. We all see the Verizon guy here. I just like this image. What a great sort of, brand that this campaign created. Can you hear me now? So what I want you to listen to here is a couple of calls. Again, they're not Verizon calls, where, you can hear exactly the kinds of multi-channel insights you can get by paying attention to what's happening in that contact center. So let's see. Let me get the first one going for you. Here it is.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to check. I paid my bill through my, online or whatever. I just wanted to see if it went through or not.
All right, that's interesting. Let's play that one more time.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to check. I paid my bill through my, online or whatever. I just wanted to see if it went through or not.
All right, that's interesting. So here's somebody who paid his bill online, and we might think that if we can pay the bill online, we're going to get rid of phone calls. Wouldn't that be great? Right? Customers can go online, they can pay the bill. And in this case, his online bill payment made him make a phone call to make sure it went through. So now it's like, wait a minute. I don't know, if you just looked at your web activity logs, right, if you just looked at your web logs, you would probably never find any evidence that would suggest that people pay bills online and leave that experience wondering, I wonder if it actually was paid. We're not going to find that by examining what's happening on the website. But by examining what's happening in a call center, we discover that there's something about that transaction that leaves customers unsure about whether the bill is actually paid. So now we have a great insight. We have an insight we can go back to the web team with, and we can figure out how to give customers even more confidence in that transaction, which is a customer satisfaction booster. And at the same time, we take volume out of the call center because nobody has to call anymore to find out whether the payment actually took. All right, let's listen to one more. I've got another interesting example.
Hello, my name is Lori. How can I help you?
Hi, Lori. I'm trying to pay my bill, and I couldn't get online because it wouldn't set my password, and I asked it to remind me of my password, and it said it would email me, and I waited and waited and waited, and I just want to pay my bill. So I called.
All right. We've got to play that one again. I'll listen to it one more time. It's always interesting to me to listen to these once or twice and pick up kind of the dialogue each time.
I'm trying to pay my bill and I couldn't get online because it wouldn't accept my password, and I asked it to remind me of my password, and it said it would email me, and I waited and waited and waited. I just want to pay my bill. So I called.
I just want to pay my bill. Well, I mean, that would just make me, shudder. I mean, they want to pay us. Why are we making it so hard for somebody who wants to pay us? So, and she had, this is 3 channels, right? Online, tried to pay the bill online. So we know something about channel preference. These people would like to pay online. Couldn't, had some problem with passwords. Couldn't get to her password, didn't work, or it got reset. Tried to do the password reset. Here comes the next channel. Told her to wait an email. The reset never happened in email. And what did she say? I waited and waited and waited. So how do we translate that? When she said, I waited and waited, what she's really saying is, you wasted my time, you wasted my time, you wasted my time. And so now she's calling saying, I just want to pay my bill, right? So again, here's a case where if we were looking at the data individually in the email system or in the website, we probably wouldn't piece together, what's happening with this customer. And we wouldn't know enough about it to know what process do we have to go fix. Where's the culprit? We know now because she told us. She described to us exactly what happened, right? There's clearly some problem with password resets on the website. There's clearly some problem with the quickness of the email back to her so she can keep going, right? So we have specific things we can go chase because of the richness of listening to the customer describe that to an agent. So real multi-channel insights. Again, we didn't have to put in some big cross-channel analytics data warehouse. This is just paying attention to people complaining about multi-channel issues when they call your center. All right. So that's really the value of that. Here's a great quote. I just love this one. This is another survey, another 2013 survey. 71%. The most important thing you can do is value my time. Value my time. Use my time well. Use my time well in each channel. Use my time well even in a call, right? Don't make me repeat information over and over again. And so we can do that certainly in the call center by tracking this end-to-end call experience and figuring out where do we ask customers to repeat information over and over again. How can we make this a more efficient use of time? We can use this by mining this conversation and finding out that there's, that they were in chat. They tried email, right? We can get cross-channel insights in here as well. Just a wealth of information available by sort of listening a little bit more and maybe getting some tools and some discipline and some expertise in your organization dedicated to this task of extracting this information and surfacing it for you and for the rest of your organization so that these can be actionable initiatives to improve interactions, improve each of the channels that you do business with. All right. So, summary. The whole call. Very powerful, reveals unknown improvement opportunities. It drives everybody to a more customer-centric view of things. It's remarkable when you listen to a call from dialing to hang-up. Everybody's thinking about the customer. We do these. We all do these listening sessions, right? We play calls for leadership. We play a call that is with an agent, a typical QA call, and everybody's listening to the agent and critiquing the agent. When you play a whole call from start to finish, including the IVR and the queue and the 2 or 3 agents that somebody had to talk to, suddenly everybody's thinking, why did we do that for the customer? Really, replaying the call as the customer experienced it reinforces this customer-centric view. And, of course, we get the richness of voice-of-customer data from interactions, which helps us in root cause analysis and really prescribing solutions. And again, it may not, examining what's happening in the call center won't tell you everything that's happening across your channels, but it reveals the tall bars. It reveals the biggest issues, the ones that really drive people to pick up the phone and, again, spend time talking about it. All right, so that's it. I guess the only other thing, and we'll have time for a few questions, just a quick sort of snapshot about how we do this. Our solution, there's something unique about our solution, which is this end-to-end idea, this idea that we actually record the call, including all transfers and outsourced partners and the IVR system. And we do that because we put our recording system in the phone network. It's a different architecture. We observe calls. We don't put anything. Our system is not at your location, right? It's in the network, and since we're in the network, it's almost like we're the caller. It's almost as if we have one of those little taps attached to the caller's handset. We get the whole experience that way because we're sitting with your customer, recording the interaction from start to finish, and then using analytics to do all of the automated trending, categorization, giving the ability to jump to interesting calls, and to have this sort of end-to-end experience. So that's, in a very, very quick nutshell, what our solution is all about. Another advantage, of course, is this sort of cloud architecture. Is no software to install, no integration to any of your systems. It's not a big IT project. We don't care what kind of phone switch you have or what kind of IVR you have or what kind of agent desktop you have, because we're not at your premise. We're up in the phone network, which just makes it, so much easier. So I won't go into more on this because, if it's something you're interested in, of course, we'd love to talk to you more about it at that time, and we could, go into more details. In fact, here are the coordinates where you can find us, and you can certainly ask for me. I think my name was on the cover slide, Joe Alwan, A-L-W-A-N. So feel free to reach out to me if you like, or contact us at those numbers. And my marketing manager is going to just die that I spelled my name out this way. But for those of you that might want to reach me, I'm happy to speak with you. And we can, explore these topics or explore what we might be able to do for you. So with that, let's see. Sherry, do we have questions that we might want to cover?
We do. We have a couple of questions that came in, and as a reminder, place your questions in the Q&A tab below. Let's see. Are you able to tell whether it was the customer who dropped the call versus the agent?
Oh, absolutely. And that's really fundamental. One of the big questions that people ask about analytics is it speaker separated? And absolutely. If you can't keep the agent and the customer separate, then the value of the analytics really is eroded. It's really important to know who did what. Was it the agent? Was it the customer? Who hung up on who? Who said what? And so, we keep that information completely separate. And we know for sure, unequivocally, without any question, whether the customer dropped the line or whether we drop the line, we being the agent or your telephony infrastructure or, your outsourced cloud call center provider. We know who dropped the call when the call's dropped.
Okay. Is there any way to tell how much effort my customer is putting into contacting my company?
Well, sure. There's a number of ways to do that, and effort is a really interesting topic. In fact, there was research not too long ago that said that effort is actually the best predictor of repurchase behavior. There's so much argument and debate, I guess, or different ways to think about customers, understanding customers. We can ask them if they're satisfied. We can ask them if they would recommend us to a friend, right? That promoter score, and the other way is effort. And it turns out that research has shown that if you ask somebody, did this take more effort than you thought it should have? If customers believe it was more effort than it should have been, that's actually a better predictor than would you recommend me to a friend and were you satisfied in terms of understanding a customer's purchase behavior. So effort is really, really important. So how do we measure it? Well, you can do a survey, and you can ask that question. Did this personally take more effort than it should have, than you think it should have? The other way to do it is to actually measure effort in the interaction. And our analytics actually makes about 20 measurements of effort in a call. So we've identified attributes of a call which customers feel are high-effort moments. So what's a high-effort moment? Well, having to repeat my ID information is high effort. Having to be transferred is high effort. When the agent says, I'm going to transfer you, and the transfer fails, I have to call back again. That's high effort. So you can do actual measurements in the interaction to identify effort, and, you can also do surveys. So there's, a couple different ways to measure effort.
Is there any research that looks at high effort and customer churn?
Let's see. The research I know of was done, I believe, was published in the Harvard Business Review. I'm trying to recall the organization that did the research. They actually did repurchase behavior. So they took actual purchase records from the companies that participated in the study, and they did the survey approach in order to measure effort. And they found a strong correlation between repurchase behavior and the customer's feeling about whether it was more effort than it should have been. So that research, and they did a comparison. They took the very same repurchase behavior data, and they did different sample groups. One sample group they asked the effort question. Another sample group they asked the net promoter question. Another sample group they asked the were you satisfied, very satisfied, not satisfied question, and found that the effort question had a stronger correlation to repurchase behavior. Now, did they ask specifically about churn? I don't think so. I think they did the flip side of that, which was did they buy again, not did they depart. So at least that's to the best of my recollection on that particular survey.
Okay, thanks. Let's see. If somebody's on hold for a long time, they hang up and call back. Is there any way to monitor for that?
Oh, of course. Certainly. And there's a couple ways to do it. Let's see. Let's tick through some of them now. Depending on how long they were on the phone and whether you ID'd the caller prior to them being put on hold. I mean, if your system captures ID information, it really depends on whether you ID in the IVR or not, or whether your agent process requires that the caller be ID'd up front, whether you require that that's always logged into the agent desktop or not, and sort of where the hold occurred. So, if you capture ID information, you, of course, can use that to piece together callers that, did they call back or not by looking for multiple occurrences of the ID information. You can go into the switch and you can pull ANI or calling party number information and look for repeat ANIs and repeat calling party numbers. Challenge with that is you don't really know if somebody called back because they were on hold or they called back because of something else. Certainly we marry together data from our system that shows holds with information that our customers have either from the switch or from their CRM systems to piece together this view and show you specifically holds followed by callback behavior. And perhaps an even easier way to do this is to look for callers who call back and say, I was on hold and nobody came on the line and I'm calling. I mean, customers will say this stuff. They will actually describe to the agent, I was just on hold and I had to call back. So, those calls are pretty easy to find. And you can find enough of those to develop an understanding of why it's happening. And that can give you sort of a directional indicator. Is this happening more frequently or less frequently over time? So there's a number of ways to get to that.
Let's see. Our next question, is the analysis typically real-time, historical, or both? And what should I really be looking at?
Well, wow, that's a big question. Good question. Big question. Is it typically real-time or historical? Wow. I mean, the fact is it's all over the map. I mean, depending on the solution you're using, some solutions are, they run some internal home built. Companies, when they build their own systems, they run batch jobs on the weekend. It's very historical. Different vendors have different solutions that are either real-time or not. Our solution, we process every call immediately upon termination. So, if you have 5-minute calls, then our system is, 5 minutes behind real time because as soon as the call's done, we process it. We don't wait and process stuff at night. So I guess as close to real time as you can imagine. So, there's a range of solutions out there. Which one do you need? It's really a function of what you're trying to solve and the problem you're trying to address. If you are doing continuous process improvement, then some degree of historical reporting probably isn't a bad deal because if you're really trying to understand the business processes in your company, it's not the process right now. It's how does this work in general for this class of call. And so a system that has a bit of a historical lag in it is probably not an issue if you're sort of researching and trying to drive continuous process improvement initiatives. if you're trying to monitor customer experience, real-time might be really important. If you're trying to monitor process changes and you want to see quickly after you put in a process change, whether it's having the desired effect, then real-time is vital. So, whether you need real-time or historical is really a function of kind of the business need that you might have.
There's a big push in my company to do more with social media and communities. How do I position my argument that we still need the investment with voice as opposed to other channels?
Well, I think my guess is that in your company and in other companies in your industry, what you'll find is that social and community are expanding the portfolio of service venues. And what we don't see is that one is replacing the other. So I think that's probably the most compelling argument, which is that phone isn't going away. It's just being used for the kinds of interactions that need the nature of a phone. And so, and I think to shift the conversation away from phone isn't disappearing, there are certain transactions that are better suited in other channels and certain transactions that require the phone. And a couple things are true about phone. It will always be the most expensive interaction channel. So if cost efficiency is important, then you must look at your high-cost component. And phone, I don't see anything coming that's going to be more expensive than phone. So that's a pretty strong argument to make sure that we're still paying attention to phone. You don't want your highest-cost component to go out of control and be even higher cost. So from a cost standpoint, I think there's a very compelling argument there. And then in terms of, what kind of inquiries are going into which venues, the inquiries that are staying in the phone are the ones that need the phone. They're escalated. They're more crucial. The customer's relationship with you is probably at stake because they've tried other channels and they've not been successful. They feel strongly enough that they want to talk to somebody about it, which means it's you're either going to rescue and keep, you're either going to have a customer for life because you're going to help them in a tough problem in a way that they didn't expect, or you're going to lose the relationship. So I think the phone is becoming an even more important moment of truth for the brand and for the customer relationship. And so I believe those are, great arguments for why, the reality of the matter is that people are choosing channels appropriate to the inquiry and appropriate to, the time that they want to interact with you. And so, if they're interacting off business hours and it's a simple transaction and they've got a computer in front of them, they're going to try and do it on the web. If it's a tough problem and they've tried 2 or 3 times and they're stuck, they're going to call, and you want to be there, and you want to service customers well on the phone just like you want to service them well in any other channel. I mean, that's really the argument behind Omnichannel, is be there where your customers want to interact with you and do it right. If you have evidence that your customers absolutely don't want to use the telephone, then maybe you should unplug your phone switch. But I don't think that's on the horizon, for any companies in the near term.
Okay. Here's another question. Should I integrate your type of system with my speech analytics?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, that's a little bit like saying, it's an interesting question. I don't mean to sort of, say anything about that, but it's a little bit of an apples and oranges question, because most speech analytics that people are using today, it's being used for agent performance assessment, and our system is used for really understanding the customer's experience from start to finish. Our solution is really more of a process optimization, process management solution. How do our processes work to handle calls? How are we using all the different resources? Do we steer callers effectively to the right resource group? Do we take advantage of any self-service opportunities that might exist in the IVR? Are we using outsourced call centers properly? Do we have skill groups defined in a way that makes sense given the kinds of inquiries we're getting? Are we able to move calls across centers, across partners, across countries effectively without dropping them and making the customer call back again? So we're looking at sort of larger process issues in your voice channel. Whereas most speech analytics are tied to a quality system and they're being used to evaluate agents. The fact is you have to do both. I mean, if you want to be at the peak performance, you want to be a world-class operation, you can't pay attention to people and ignore process, right? We all know that call centers are a combination of process, technology, and people. And so if we're going to excel in the center, we better be paying attention to technology behind our center. We've got to be paying attention to the workforce, and we've got to be paying attention to the business processes that drive contact volume and the business processes that allow us to service contact volume. And so we are all about that business process angle or dimension, and to some extent how technology either disrupts or enables business processes. Whereas Omnichannel typically is part of an agent sort of human capital management approach. So I would say you need both. You need to be paying attention to agents and managing your workforce, and you need to have the ability to look at your contact processes, look at the business processes that drive contact volume, look at the business processes that define the satisfaction or the cost efficiency of servicing that call volume, and that's really our focus.
Okay, good. And we are coming up just about the top of the hour. Any questions we did not have the chance to get to, we'll forward those over to Joe, and he can get back to you personally. So let's just take 30 seconds, Joe, and let's do a wrap-up of what you would like the audience to remember.
Well, I think the thing to remember is that for most businesses that I've run into that I think we all interact with, Omnichannel and multi-channel doesn't mean the death of the phone. And in fact, and the other thing I guess the key point would be that multi-channel and omnichannel, in fact, make it more complex to manage satisfaction because we've got multiple other places where customers and interactions can show up. And so we've got the need to coordinate that across more venues. So the task of managing experience, the task of managing effort and satisfaction has gotten more complex and therefore demands more attention. And I think the last point I would make is that it really isn't necessary to build some sort of Uber data warehouse and pull in all this data from all these systems to get a handle on what's going on in your channel. There are easier ways, lower cost ways, faster ways for you to get a quick handle on the things that are really going to be impactful in terms of fixing processes, fixing the way your various channels are operating and satisfying your customers' needs.
Okay, great. And that is all the time we have. We just run out of time. I will forward all those questions on that we did not have the opportunity to get to. As a reminder, again, this comes up in the chat to me, where to find the slides. So that's if you go to ecrmevents.com, log in, click the Agenda tab, and right with the session, you will see the download PDF. And for those webinars that have already taken place, you will be able to find the recordings for those web events. And remember to visit the exhibit hall where you can go to the AVOKE booth. And we have our last session coming up at 2:30 Eastern, 60 Ideas in 60 Minutes. It's a round robin of real good ideas, so you don't want to miss that. So thank you so much to Joe Owen with AVOKE for bringing us this presentation. And at this point, we will be closing this webcast. Thank you all, and we'll see you in about half an hour.